First of all, onto Victoria.
Good morning.
Are you expecting a New Zealand-style shutdown?
Well, I certainly expect that restrictions will be further tightened in order to ensure that we effectively ring-fence, the areas of outbreak. The Prime Minister and the Premier will continue to work closely to do what needs to be done in order to get on top of this crisis.
The numbers continue to rise, though, and that would suggest that what's happened so far has failed.
Well, clearly, until such time as the numbers start coming down again, we need to continue to work on finding better ways to getting on top of this, and that's what we'll continue to do.
So, would you support that New Zealand-style shutdown?
Well, I'm not going to make prescriptions here on television. I will let the Prime Minister and the Premier and relevant authorities continue to work through this methodically. But I mean, everybody wants to ensure that we get on top of this as soon as possible. And we're going to just have to go through the orderly processes to make sensible decisions that are effective.
As you know, Queensland shutting its border to Greater Sydney from 1 a.m. tomorrow morning. What is the cost of that going to be to the economy?
Well, it's not going to be good for the economy when we have to shut down, areas or when we have to impose additional restrictions. But the priority ought to be the health of our population. I mean, we want to protect people's health. We want to ensure that we contain the spread of the virus. And so in those circumstances where you've got outbreaks of community transmission, of course you have to take these measures, but does it come at an economic cost? Of course it does.
And do you have the numbers? I mean, we talked about Victoria closing its borders, costing $1 billion a week. What's Queensland's numbers?
Well, we made an assessment in the context of putting the economic statement together in terms of the cost in Victoria, which was $3.3 billion over that 6-week period of the shutdown. We haven't, this is a rapidly evolving situation. This is fluid. We haven't got an updated estimate in terms of the cost of decisions that are in the course of being taken in the context of Queensland. But, suffice to say, this is going to have a negative impact. But, in the context of seeking to protect people's health, seeking to save lives by containing the spread of the virus from areas where there is community transmission, of course, that is entirely appropriate.
Is last week's economic update already out of date?
Well, yes, it is. I mean, and we said that at the time. We said at the time that there was significant uncertainty in terms of the domestic and global health and economic outlook, and we explained very clearly that this was a rapidly evolving, fluid situation, and that there would be, further changes as we move forward. That was always, transparently on the cards.
So, how many more jobs do you expect will be lost because of these shutdowns?
Look, the next update will be provided in the budget on the 6th of October. We delayed the budget because there is such difficulty in making credible forecasts in the context of a situation that's evolving. When earlier this year in March, the advice was that by the end of June, the official unemployment rate could be as high as 10%. It was only 7.4% because in the period from March to the end of June, the easing of restrictions was able to be done faster in large parts of Australia than had been anticipated. But clearly, the situation in Victoria, in parts of New South Wales, and the fallout for other states, is going to have a negative effect, and we will quantify that next in the context of the budget.
Yeah, I mean, and there may well be more shutdowns before then.
Well, things could be worse or they could be better.
Yeah.
These things are very hard to predict from where we are now.
And even over where you are, would you be supporting Clive Palmer's bid to open up the border with the West?
Yeah. No, we don't support any specific litigant, but clearly, I mean, there is a High Court case underway that we did not initiate. We certainly want to see hard borders and protections in place in relation to areas where there are outbreaks of community transmission. In relation to other parts of Australia, I mean, we believe that we need to work together, the federal government and the state government, to make sure that whatever protections are put in place are ultimately constitutionally sustainable. I mean, nobody is going to be protected if there are arrangements in place that are ultimately removed by the High Court. We've got to make sure that we've got arrangements in place that protect people's health, that protect us from the risk of spread from areas where there's community transmission. But those protections have got to be put in place between governments working together in a way that ultimately will not run foul of the Constitution.
The number of super withdrawals has doubled expectations. Are you worried about that?
No, I mean the number of super withdrawals, continues to be quite low as a proportion of the overall funds saved. I mean, before we went into this crisis, super funds had about $300 billion worth of cash at hand. The withdrawals represent about 1.5% of all funds saved for people's retirements. This is one of a multitude of options that people who have lost their jobs or who have had significant reductions in income have to manage their financial affairs, and we trust people to be able to make sensible judgments in relation to their money. I mean, it is their money that they are using to help manage a financial challenge during a very difficult period.
So you don't have any concerns about how they're spending it, either putting it on their mortgages or whatever. You're not worried about how they're spending it?
Well, we trust people to make judgments in relation to their own money and how to allocate their own money. I mean, it's their money. If people putting it on their mortgage is clearly a very sensible thing for them to do, reducing their income costs. But in the end, I mean, people have lost their jobs. People who have lost hours or have lost significant parts of their income have got this opportunity on top of a range of other support measures the government has put in place to manage their financial circumstances through a very challenging period.
And just finally, Minister, I know it's not your portfolio, but we had some friends of Kylie Moore-Gilbert on the show a short time ago. They're saying now that the government efforts to free her in Iran are not working. Quiet diplomacy is not working. Do you agree with that?
Well, look, Dr. Moore-Gilbert's case is one of our highest priority consular cases right now. Our whole team in Tehran is working very hard to provide to do everything we can to help resolve the situation. I mean, we are aware that Dr. Moore-Gilbert has been shifted to Karjak, a women's prison east of Tehran, and we're seeking urgent consular access. I mean, this is a difficult situation, but we're doing everything we can to provide the appropriate support and hopefully a resolution.
Are you worried about her?
Well, of course. I mean, it's a terrible situation to be in. Absolutely, we're worried, and we are doing what we can to provide the appropriate levels of support. As I say, this is one of our highest priority cases around the world right now.